All right, we're on to our final lesson here before we get into our final activity. And so this is lesson 6 on screws. We're going to dive in. We need to clear our scene. So we've already should have all of our levels disabled. You might have re-enabled to be able to do the pulley extensions, but if you did, you'll just disable, make sure you set them all to blueprint, and we are going to hop into our screw level. So we will toggle visibility, right click make current, and then change our streaming method to always loaded. And so we've got a pipe with a screw and some dominoes getting started on the table with a bucket labeled bucket C on the far side, bucket B on the back side, and bucket A on the right side. And so if we hit the 6 key, we can start to see our full scene come together here. And so our first job is to get an orange up the inclined plane of our slope and then down that ramp. And we will see what we can do from here. So first we need an orange. So we're going to move the orange on our table. We can drag it straight up and try to put it over inside of our tube. You can always press F to frame it. Something that you might need to be aware of is our ability to click through visible objects. So you'll see right now, if I am trying to click through this tube, I'm not able to grab anything through it. And so something that we can do is we can press T, and that turns on our ability to click through transparent things. And so that is going to be really helpful for this section. So once we get our orange in place, let's just hit play and see what happens in our scene. Well, our screw's not moving, so that's the first thing we need to do, is we need to change our screw's rotation rate. And so I'm going to change mine up to 360, see what happens here. Is it the right direction? It looks like it is. So now that screw is pulling the orange, but it's only getting about halfway up my ramp. And so we, on our screw, have another one of those blue diamonds. If I zoom in just a little bit here, and we can start to use that to drag out our screw. We also change how big the threads are using the blue arrow. And so I'm going to actually drag mine all the way to the top of the ramp. So hopefully that when the orange gets to there, it should go straight down the ramp on the other side. So let's see. Make sure I didn't make the threads too big. It looks like it's holding well. And there we go. My orange makes it down the ramp. And it even is going to make it pretty close to bucket A. It almost made it in. And so that's going to be your first challenge, is to get that ball up the ramp and over into bucket A. And so once you've done that, we can hit save, Control S, save. And now we're going to talk about extending our splines. So that white line that we had used with our dominoes in the pulley activity is what we call a spline. And we can have things spawn along a spline. And so in this case, we have our ramp spawning along the spline. And so we can extend our spline points, right, by grabbing them and moving them in local space to extend how long they go. But when we select a spline point, one of those primary white blocks, we see two more blocks show up. And if I select one of those, that's where I can start to add a curve to it. And so I can curve it, to the right, try to get that orange into the B bucket. I could curve it back to the left and try to get it back into the A bucket. And I can even, try to get it all the way over to my dominoes. And so those are your next few challenges here. Using just this initial ramp, let's make sure that, one, we can get our orange into bucket A. So extending that ramp a little bit, seeing if we can get it into bucket A. And then we'll see if we can get it into bucket B, and eventually getting something into bucket C. All right, so now we're going to use our slide for bucket B. And so this is where we're going to introduce our ability to add spline points. So if I right click anywhere along that white spline line, I can add a spline point, which helps me add better direction and flow to my spline actors, right? And so I can bring in and start to change the direction of these. I could even add a spline point here so that I can drag this one further out and try to get that orange pretty much directly into the bucket. And so that's what your challenge here is, to get the orange into bucket B. And then see how many tries and how many spline points it takes you to get that orange into bucket B. All right, for our engine activity, we're going to leverage what we know about splines to change our ramp so that it hits and starts our dominoes. And then we need to extend our dominoes, navigate it through the mess on the kitchen table, and eventually end with a domino falling into bucket C. And so some things to pay attention to, I'm not going to do this on screen because this is the challenge for you to start to figure out, is one, if we look with our 9 key, we can see from above, which will help give us a flat view of our table. But as we extend and change the tangents and shape of our domino train and start to extend out and add spline points, some things to pay attention to are making sure that your dominoes are level. So I just added a few new dominoes, and we can already start to see that they're starting to move around on my table in ways that I don't intend. And it's very easy to accidentally pull up your tangent and have dominoes fall into the table, and it's even easier to accidentally get them to rise above the table. And so something that we can make sure that we do is, while we're doing this, we can come back through and hit the end key on any points to make sure that as we go, if we accidentally ended them up in the sky, we can hit end and it'll slam them back down to the table. And that's the END key to make sure that happens. So we are going to leave this challenge up to you to change your ramp from going to bucket B to starting your domino chain, and then to extend your domino chain across the kitchen table through the mess that is on the kitchen table until you have a domino that lands in bucket C. And so I'll leave that space here for you to explore. All right, some more notes just as I'm scrolling through the documentation here. Things that they want you to be paying attention to is you don't want super sharp angles on your dominoes. Similar to building dominoes in the real world, if we have really sharp angles like this, our dominoes aren't going to hit each other. And so we want to make sure that we have real smooth curves here. And that's what that kind of pulling that tangent key out on for helps us with. It helps us build out those curves so that they continue to go around. And so we can look at it that way. And they also suggest that you can use the scale tool to see the tangents move away from each other. So if we're centered here, we can scale out our tangent keys and see how they move away from each other. And that'll help with some of them and not others. But you can also look at using the rotate tool to help rotate a point so that you can get those narrow angles apart. And then finally, it talks about adding a spline point right at the end so that you can guarantee where that final domino is going to be before we hit save all. And so this should be a relatively quick lesson, but there are a few extension activities here, like creating an upward spline ramp that moves the ball of a screw so that maybe you can get that orange from the ground up into your ramp before it goes down and hits the dominoes, making an elevator with a screw, and then drawing a picture with your dominoes or your extension challenges. So once you've drawn that picture, you can get your screenshot, and then we will cover the activity for this unit as a class in the upcoming days. So look forward to that.